Good evening. I want to thank everyone for coming to the regularly scheduled open meeting of the DOA group of Alcoholics Anonymous, 11 p.m. EST. My name is Marty, and I'm an alcoholic, and I'm your chair for tonight. Let us open the meeting with a moment of silence for the sick and suffering alcoholic, followed by the Serenity prayer for those who know and care to join. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. I will now read How It Works. Chapter 5. How it works. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. They are such unfortunates. They are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They're naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. The chances are less than average. There are those too who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Our stories disclose, in a general way, what used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. If you have decided you want what we have, and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. At some of these we balked. We thought we could find an easier, softer way, but we could not. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless, thorough from the very start. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil. Till we let go absolutely. Here, alcohol, cunning, baffling, powerful. Without help, it's too much for us. But there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. Half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon. Here are the steps we took, which I suggested as a program of recovery. 1. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol. Their lives had become unmanageable. 2. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. 4. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5. Admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6. We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7. Humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. 8. Made a list of all persons we had harmed, and became willing to make amends to them all. 9. Made direct mention to people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10. Continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Many of us exclaimed, "What an order! I can't go through with it." Don't be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We are not saints. The point is, if we were willing to grow along spiritual lines, the principles we have set down guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear three pertinent ideas. A. If we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B. Probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. C. That God could and would if he were sought. Thanks to all who listened. If you would like to share, please raise your hand and I will call on you. Tonight's topic is from the audio Grapevine. I'll set it up now.
Welcome to the January 2011 issue of Grapevine magazine. We start with a note from the managing editor.
At what point did you admit you were powerless over alcohol? According to Bill W., writing in the March 1960 AA Grapevine, this simply means that all of us have to hit bottom and hit it hard and lastingly. That bottom comes in many forms, and the essays in this month's special section are particularly poignant accounts of powerlessness. In The young female author of Puppet of Destruction writes, ironically, my bottom was not when I lost my apartment, my job, my boyfriend, or the respect of my family, and goes on to share that her complete emptiness of all emotion brought her to step one. These and other stories like these remind us that while the road to admitting powerlessness may be rough, the key to recovery can be as simple as learning to be normal. Service takes many forms, and sending your stories and art to AA Grapevine is one of them. We are now accepting submissions for the 2012 AA Grapevine Wall Calendar Photo Contest. Get someone's day started right with an inspiring image. Learn more in this issue, or visit aagrapevine.org. In fellowship, the managing editor, me@aagrapevine.org. Home Group. Order in the court. A group adjusts when the police force occupies its courtroom meeting place.
I am the general service rep of a big book group that meets each Tuesday night in a courthouse in Melbourne, Australia. The time I opened up the rooms for the first time, it ended up being a very eventful night. Both our regular secretaries were away, and the person who would normally take over was in the States at the 2010 AA convention in San Antonio, Texas. I stepped up for what I thought was going to be the simple process of opening the doors to the courthouse, setting up the banners, getting the water urn going, ensuring that there were enough biscuits, that the toilets were clean, and generally making the meeting go smoothly. How wrong I was to be. I left home early and got milk. My wife had baked a cake for the meeting because I was opening up for the first time, so I was excited. I turned up at the courthouse expecting it to be dark. We normally have to go around the corner to the police station to get the key to open up. Yet the courthouse was lit up brightly. I thought. Someone else must have gotten here and opened up before me. As I walked toward the door, I could see a small sandwich board outside, but it wasn't the AA one. Instead it said, Police Station. What was going on? I entered the courthouse, and true enough, the police were all stationed behind the counter. I went up and asked what was going on. They told me that the main police station was being renovated, and in the meantime, they were going to have to operate from the courthouse. I told them that AA met here every week in the actual courtroom, and they said go ahead and do what I needed to do, as they were not using the courtroom. There in the foyer to the police station, I had to try and find all the banners, the AA sandwich board, the heaters, the water urn, and everything else I needed to set up the meeting. The only problem was that we kept all these articles in the part of the courthouse now occupied by the police. The banners and books were behind the counter, and the police were not keen for me to go rummaging around. The kitchen was back there, too, for water and cups. They did let me into the room at the back, now transformed into the lockup, where we kept the heaters, coffee, tea, biscuits, and water urn. I found most of these things, but the urn was nowhere to be found. I also could not find the AA sandwich board to stick outside the building. I tried to describe it to the police, who looked everywhere for it, but they could not find it. There we were, holding a meeting in a makeshift police station with no AA sign outside, only a police station sign. By this time, I was wondering what else could go wrong. I soon found out. I turned on one of the heaters in the courtroom, and it caught on fire. Flames were everywhere, and black smoke billowed up to the ceiling. Luckily, it did not set off any alarms, and no police rushed in to find out what was going on. I managed to quickly unplug the heater and blow out the fire. I took the melted heater out and showed the police. They said, "Give it here," and chucked it out the back. I quickly got all the chairs down and then wondered what I could do about the water urn. Thankfully, by this time, another member had turned up to help. The co-location with the police made things slightly awkward. We managed to work things out, and the police were very friendly. However, we still couldn't find our water urn. When we asked the police if they had seen it, they said, "The big silver one? We're using it." They brought it out from behind the police counter. Of course, it was boiling hot, but somehow the officer managed to get it round out front and onto the table. Now the police use the AA urn when we are not having meetings. I still couldn't find the AA signboard. I stood outside the entrance asking people who were coming in if they were going to see the police or wanted AA. Thankfully, I managed to catch a few AAs who were coming to the meeting for the first time and were perplexed by the police sign outside. As for the others going in to see the police, I am not sure what they thought. I led the AAs inside, and we finally got the meeting going. At the end of the meeting, I invited the police to have some of my wife's cake, which they proceeded to do. They came out from behind the counter and grabbed some slices along with the rest of us. The night ended in a friendly and positive way. In fact, it ended up being one of the most enjoyable meetings and nights I have had in AA. It shows that if you just accept the situation and go with the flow without fighting it, your higher power always has a way of teaching you a lesson if only you are open to hearing it. I heard it that night, and it was just what I needed. Since that night, we found the AA sandwich board. For the last few weeks, outside the meeting location, there are 2 sandwich boards, one for the police station and one for AA. It looked quite funny. Finally, the police have moved back round the corner to their refurbished station, and all is back to normal. But it was very eventful while it lasted. Adrian B., Melbourne, Australia.
Into action. King of excuses. Biking to a service commitment was not his idea of how to spend a Sunday night.
My hair is still releasing droplets of the summer rain, running in rivulets down my nose and cheeks as the result of a half-mile bicycle ride. The culmination of promised precipitation almost became a really poor excuse, the only kind there is, for not fulfilling a service role that I took for my home group. My group, a men's meeting, has a standing commitment at a Bronx hospital every other Sunday evening at their drug and alcohol rehab unit to bring in an AA meeting, a true blessing that can sometimes present itself as a burden. It amazes me how many lame reasons I can come up with to not do the next right thing, those positive actions that guarantee me peace of mind and happily contented sobriety. I received a text message earlier in the afternoon from my cherished friend and co-commitment taker, 2 speakers are preferred for this meeting, with a completely valid reason for his inability to make the meeting, a work-related schedule conflict. As one of the ranks of the unemployed, I know a job is a close front-runner to an AA commitment, at least for someone not early in recovery fighting a drink. Also, he knew that if necessary, I could carry the meeting on my own. After a few unanswered phone calls to other group members to find a replacement for my co-speaker, and a ride, of course, recall the promised precipitation, with no luck, the inevitable blessing of this opportunity for service began looking so much more like a burden. So as the hour started to near for me to begin to dress and get on my bicycle for my less than 10-minute pedal to Bronx State, The lazy and undisciplined side of my nature started rearing its ugly head and scrambling for an acceptable out. In came the voice of the great I Am. After all, I had taken the lion's share of the outgoing commitments at the business meeting this month and thus far fulfilled every one. I was always responsible and conscientious when it came to fulfilling the group's commitments. I was more than entitled to be a slacker just this once, was I not? Not to mention that the promised rain was beginning to be delivered in the way of a steady drizzle. Besides, they are mostly addicts over there, part of the reason some members of our alcohol-only group want to give up this commitment. In addition, a lot of them just sleep anyway or gaze out the window and can't wait until the speakers leave so they can watch TV. Speaking of which, I never saw this episode of Criminal Minds, and it seems like a good one. Lots of seemingly viable lame excuses for a mind like mine, ever ready to believe the lies. You have heard it said, and it is a fact, that the disease of alcoholism is fatally progressive if left unchecked. Just as factual are the progressive natures of the recovery process, and inversely, the progression of negative thoughts and actions or inactions. Well, as one who is joyfully and painfully aware of both ends of that spectrum, and prone to backsliding into quite undisciplined thoughts and behaviors, I'm extremely grateful that, for this day at least, I chose to hear and heed the words that my sponsor had spoken many times at meetings, words that I am accountable for sometimes disregarding and feeling guilty about later. Turn off the TV and get to a meeting. The TV will not get drunk, but you might. But for the grace of God, I got out of my own way, and I moved a muscle and changed a thought. Because of hearing my higher power's voice of truth as opposed to the useless lies the lower power is always trying to sell me, I became part of the solution as opposed to remaining a part of the problem, and the burden that my negative self, which will always be with me to greater and lesser degrees, was projecting this 1-hour commitment to be, manifested into the true blessing that it always was. Even though there are many at that rehab who may never find their way to being truly happy, joyous, and free as the result of the loving fellowship and the healing principles of 12-step recovery, I was willing, just for today, to attempt to be an instrument of God's peace by getting out of myself and my own self-centered obsessions and planting the seed of hope in the hearts and minds of still suffering alcoholics. My hair is well dry now from my post-commitment bicycle ride in the rain, which was quite enjoyable, by the way. But that is not where the true blessing lies. It is not so simple to put my finger on, though the blessings exist in abundance. It could be the fact that my slothful desire to be a slacker tonight was driven out of me in a moment of thought, in the words, "Do it." I wish that this always worked for me. Or it could be the blessing that comes with the understanding that even though God may enable, empower, and allow me to plant the seeds of hope, He is ultimately in charge of the nurturing and growing of those seeds. Yes, those things are certainly contributors to the abundance of the gifts and blessings of sobriety that I received tonight as a result of simple service. But the one that will most likely remain in my memory for many years is when Bob shared with me after the meeting was over that he'd been waiting 18 days for me to get there. I guess Bob read the confusion on my face, but he did not leave me wondering for long. He told me first that the majority of the patients were addicts and not alcoholics, and that much of the group's discussions focused primarily on drugs as the result of that. But he went on to tell me that everything I shared of my experience, strength and hope, was as if he had been speaking the words himself. Even though I am aware of the connectedness that each and every one of us has to play in God's ultimate design, tonight was one of those outgoing commitments when I specifically felt the energy of being a part of Father's divine plan. Whether or not Bob uses my phone number is in God's hands, because we always must remember that we carry the message, not the alcoholic. But of course my hope and prayers are with him, and all of those struggling with this deadly disease. If Bob wants what recovery has to offer, he will call. It would be nice to carry more than just the memory of this day into my tomorrows. One can never have too many like-minded friends seeking to live a sober life. Finally, something that I must keep in mind and seek to put into daily practice if I want to continue to morph burdens into blessings are these simple truths. The program of recovery in Alcoholics Anonymous is not for the people who need it. It is not even for the people who want it. The gifts and blessings of the program of recovery in Alcoholics Anonymous are for the people who do it. Scott M., Bronx, New York. Getting kinda cocky.
Having 9 years sobriety has brought me to a place of self-awareness. I've been regularly attending meetings for 9 years. I have always had a sponsor. I've sponsored many, and I consider myself a fairly healthy and spiritual person. The AA program has done wonders in my life. I read my daily readings, I talk in meetings, and I've worked the steps. I've done all the things that are suggested for emotional sobriety, and have had some life-on-life's terms things happen to me in sobriety in various ways. I still stayed sober. Recently, it was brought to my attention that there was a need for someone to chair some 4:30 p.m. meetings. Well, I haven't had a regular service position since I first got sober in 2000. I chaired 2 meetings a week regularly and met with my sponsor once a week. I also called her every day. I did this for about my first 2 years in this program. This is normal in new sobriety. I surely didn't need to be doing all that now, right? I made the commitment to chair this meeting, and I've been doing it for a few weeks now. I'm still shaking when I read the opening statement. I don't know anyone, and no one knows me. I feel like when I first got sober, I'm nervous, fidgety, and worried that I'm not doing it correctly. I've been humbled to a state of complete honesty. I'm so raw and vulnerable. I am actually starting to enjoy this stage of my sobriety. It's definitely a feeling I'd forgotten about. I had gotten very comfortable in my meetings and my commitments. It's good for me to change it up and be a little uncomfortable, as it helps me grow. Thank God for this program. I am truly grateful. D.G. Conotia, Wisconsin.
If you would like to share on topic or whatever is on your heart or anything that is helping you in your sobriety, please raise your hand and I will call on you. Thanks again.